Poker is a hard way to make an easy living. The game tree is huge, the competition is fierce, and even at the best of times, variance is going to cause you to doubt your approach on almost a daily basis. I struggled with this for half a decade before I got clear on how poker really works and zeroed in on a process that let me easily put theory into practice. In this video, I'm going to tell you how professionals actually win their money, key insights that help me and my clients cut through the noise and stay focused on what really matters. Here's what I wish I knew when I started. Holding in my hands a regular deck of 52 cards. Let's just give it a shuffle. Make sure there's no jokers in there. The guarantee card. How much do you want to bet that no one in history has ever held a deck of cards in this exact order? It seems inconceivable, but there's somewhere in the range of 8 times 10 to the power of 67. That's 8 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0. Yeah, that's 8 with 67 zeros after it. To put that in perspective, even if someone could rearrange a deck of cards every second of the universe's total existence, the universe would end before they got a billionth of the way to finding a repeat. Then factor in the option to bet any size you want, multi-way situations, the hidden information, you don't know their hand, you don't know which cards are going to come out, and you've got a game that's easy to learn and truly impossible to master. In terms of mastering strategy, 5 minutes with a solver will show you just how hard it is to play unexploitably, to actually reach true balance. Luckily, we're not playing the solver, that's not our job, we're playing people. Most people, even poker players, are risk averse. Given the choice, we prefer predictable situations, lower variance situations. We avoid these situations that are really high risk, high reward. We'd rather face a familiar situation of low consequence than face a decision for our tournament life getting stared down by this guy. My career took off when I realized just how imbalanced and predictable people really are. Solvers showed me just how aggressively poker is meant to be played relative to how people think it's meant to be played. Our intuition is just completely off. It takes an enormous amount of work to actually get comfortable betting, raising, and calling enough. Let's take a quick look at how this works in the solver before I explain why you really don't need to bother going through this process every hand. I want to look at a common situation, a double flush draw board, and talk about how human strategy tends to differ from solver without getting too deep into the theory weeds. Go to the flop. If it's using a 40 or check strategy, you don't do too bad if you just bet everything, but I digress. Now we get to the turn, 3, bringing in the double flush draw. And what is solver doing? And think to yourself, like, how will people actually play here? Is someone at your local casino, is an unstudied player going to check ace-king on the turn with 2 flush draws out there? Or are they going to bet because they don't want to get cooled? But same with like king-queen, king-jack, just in general. What are people going to do with their top pair? What are people going to do with their flush draws? They're going to bet them pretty much all the time. So when they check, how many good hands do they have on the river? Less than solver. When they bet, how strong or weak are they? They might have extra bluffs, so kind of hard to say, but they're going to have their good hands in that betting range. So we get here, see like ace-king, almost always betting the turn for an overbet size in theory land. Using stuff like ace-queen as a bluff, that's going to be pretty hard to find because, hey, it's ace-high. Surely they would check that. Some of these bluffs make sense. Again, they might use a different size, but it doesn't matter too much. Stuff like ace-4 of club. These are not intuitive bluffs. Flush draws are. So you can see, just looking at this, people are probably playing pretty differently. If I faced 175% overbet from a fish, I wouldn't assume that they had ace-4 of spades in their range. I'd assume they had a strong draw or a strong pair or a set or 2 pair. And conversely, when they check, I'm expecting more weak hands, because if they're not betting ace-4, they're checking it. So big blind now is, all the king X are good enough to bet, and it's bluffing pretty much everything without a pair. See, all these pairs are checking. Good ace-high is checking, and it's bluffing everything else. The bluffs aren't making a ton of money, so we get here with 10-9. It isn't actually always bluffing 10-9 even, because in position is going to call some of these ace-high. They're still going to check some ace-king and check some aces, and they're going to raise them on the river. Similarly, they're going to find bluff raises with stuff like queen X. So if we now node lock this, if we now say we don't have ace-king, or ace-king is folding, aces is folding, we don't even have these, and we're just folding these queen-9, we're folding these bluff raises, we don't have king-queen, we don't have ace-queen that's bluff raising. Like, this is a real thing, right? Some people just aren't bluff raising river once they check turn. You go to a live game, you can kind of assume that this is the case. Maybe they have some of these weaker king X to call. Now they're folding a lot more, we go back over here, and now we're bluffing everything. And now it's making a ton of money. Now 10-9, which before was checking because it made no money, is winning 4 big blinds out of a pretty small pot. It's a really small pot. This just means we're winning like the majority of the time when we bet. It's really that simple. And see how the poker strategy, when put into the calculator and said, this is what they're doing, what do we do? It confirms what we already know about poker strategy. So the challenging thing, as we'll get into, is actually identifying the imbalances in a case-by-case, spot-by-spot basis, because this is just one really quite clear example. But a lot of these patterns recur, a lot of them are predictable, and a lot of them are a lot bigger than you would ever imagine. And as you're aware of that, it just makes it a hell of a lot easier and saves you a hell of a lot of time. You don't need to look at what happens when a fish checks the turn very much. Long story short, bet flop, check turn, especially on a scary board, 9 times out of 10, they don't have as good of a range as PO. They're going to fold more, bluff everything. So poker's easy in the sense that you tend to bet and you tend to raise your good hands and you mix that with bluffs. It's hard in that hard to put the right ratio of bluffs and value and strong hands there. Because if you're putting your strong hands in the betting line, you don't have them in the checking line. So to get that exact ratio, that exact sort of mix of this that the solver has, takes a lot of work and is near impossible. So what you want to do is be proactive about looking at the imbalances in your game and other people's games. When they check the turn, they're inevitably imbalanced one way or the other. They inevitably have too many strong hands in one line and not enough in another. This is where you start finding exploits. This is how you start finding imbalance. So figure out what people are doing and get after it.